Jack just threw an orange at the suspect, and he judged that this suspect wasn't the real murderer. But Jack's colleague got angry. The colleague questioned him why he could judge whether that person was the real murderer just by using an orange. Just a few days ago, a man who looked like a clown broke into the mansion. He took the things in the mansion and sent the owner of the mansion to heaven. When the police came to investigate, after Jack examined the victim's wounds, he found that the murderer's modus operandi was very similar to the case that happened 10 years ago. The murderer named David committed 3 cases within a year back then. Then he was arrested by the police. He is still locked up in prison now. It was the police chief who worked on the case with Jack that caught him. The police chief speculated that the murderer deliberately imitated David's method to affect the efficiency of the police's investigation. But Jack made another speculation, because after the murderer committed the crimes back then, he would always take a pair of the hostess's shoes. When Jack and the police chief opened the shoe cabinet of this mansion, they also found that a pair of shoes was missing. Therefore, Jack thought that David wasn't the murderer back then, and the real murderer back then still hadn't been caught. But the police chief always firmly believed in his own opinion. He thought that the murderer of this case was just an imitator. While they were arguing, another policeman made a new discovery. He found that both the victim and his wife had received strange emails from the same person in their mailboxes. Then they followed the IP address and found that person. That person denied having anything to do with this case. But Jack noticed something strange in his expression. Then Jack quietly walked into the basement. He heard a woman's cry for help behind the iron cabinet. At this time, the others also rushed over. Jack quickly opened that door. At this time, a policeman also subdued Nick. Then Jack found a woman locked in a room there. Jack learned from the woman that Nick had been with her on the day the murderer committed the crime. Then the police realized that Nick wasn't the murderer either. At this time, they also found that the pistol used by the murderer in this case was the same as the one used by the murderer 10 years ago. It was only then that the police chief agreed to have a conversation with David. David also told the truth at this time. He said that he was wronged, because the person who was going to testify for him back then disappeared. Then he didn't have other evidence to prove that he wasn't the murderer. So in order to get a reduced sentence, he could only take the initiative to act as the criminal. At this time, the police chief also started to get irritable. Jack suspected that the police chief had some hidden secrets. Then Jack tried to find that witness from back then. But he learned from the witness's son that the witness had passed away a few years ago. This case fell into a deadlock again.